Because of the reboot that's totally not happening soon, this series is going to be made redundant very, very soon. 2 more videos, that's all we're doing from this series. The 2 that you actually really need, anything that you need to know on recording from this, we're going to link you to a channel that will do a much better job than I could ever do. So, this video, compression. You might have heard of it, you might not have. It's really important. Okay, so an overview of what compression is. It can get a bit complicated with how it works, and it's kind of hard to fully understand because in a visual concept it doesn't fully do it justice to what it's actually doing audiodically. That's not a word.
Audiodically.
Yeah, audiodically.
Audiodically.
What compression does is it takes a threshold of volume, so that would be in decibels, and what it does is if something goes over that threshold, it will reduce the volume to a certain ratio as to what the volume actually is. This can be described in diagrams and all that kind of stuff, but that's when it gets a little bit weird in actually fully understanding it. You can set the ratio in whatever compression plugin that you are using, and you set it to say to 3:1. If the audio that you are mixing goes over the threshold by 3 decibels, then it will be reduced to 1 decibel. That's how the 3:1 thing works. Obviously that works in ratio, so if it goes up by 6, it will then be reduced to 2. Generally, compression is used to stop the contrast between something being so quiet and something being so loud. So in music you might think that that's a good thing to have massive dynamics, and it is, but generally it's a full overall song dynamic. The entire song might get quieter at certain points and the entire song might get louder at certain points, but in an individual track, which is generally what you'd use compression on, I mean you do use it on the entire track for mastering, but that's a whole different conversation. You're compressing a track. What it's doing is there are certain points when you're playing your instrument that the instrument will get very slightly quieter or very slightly louder, and the compression stops that from happening to have it, it almost seems more consistent.
File these for me, Debbie.
Is it because I'm wearing glasses?
Mm-hmm. You're like a receptionist.
Punk. If it's done right, you won't ever notice that compression is taking place. But you kind of get accustomed to the sound, and something that is then uncompressed sounds really unprofessional, and it's like a guitar track or a vocal generally is really obvious to see when it's overly compressed. It gives this professional quality, and radio do it all the time. Radio actually compress everything, like to get all their tracks at a consistent volume, they just compress the crap out of everything, including their voices. Because you're making each individual audio track more consistent to itself in making it more consistent, so that anything that above a certain threshold gets brought on down, so that anything that goes over kind of stays the same, and that kind of thing. It kind of keeps everything on a similar volume. In doing that, if every single track does that, it kind of meshes together a lot better. Everything in the track sounds more cohesive to one another, and it blends better, and that is how you kind of get a mixed track sound. That's how it sounds like a fully mixed track. Generally it's compression that's doing it. A mix obviously will do a massive amount of difference by turning up the kick drum or turning down the guitar, obviously getting a consistent thing, but adding compression to everything and doing it to a correct kind of sound. At the end of the video I'm going to link to a video that talks about in-depth compression for individual instruments, because it does change for each individual instrument. You want to have more on guitars than say on vocals, and it changes, the ratios change, and it's all very, very tedious. It's a very tedious thing, and it's harder to learn than it originally seems. It seems like, oh yeah, I can just put a bit of compression on it, it'll be fine. But to actually master it is a lot harder. So I'm not going to attempt to try and teach you that, because there are better people to do it, and if you want to genuinely really learn how to do it, don't listen to me. That being said, I'll give you a little kind of demonstration as to what compression can sound like. This is going to be way exaggerated and it shouldn't be used this much, but I'll give you an example of something that's uncompressed and then something that's massively compressed, just so you get that kind of gist. Okay, so here's an example of something that gets really loud. Okay, so here's an example of something that gets really loud. Okay, so here's an example of something that gets really loud. There's a massive misconception with compression that it actually brings everything up to the same volume and not down. What compression does is it brings it down. Compression will always make it quieter, it never makes it louder. What you can do is you can compensate for it by turning the volume up. Generally that's what people will do, they will compress down, turn the volume up. A limiter will compress and then turn it up, but that is That's a massive misconception that a lot of people think, is that it brings the volume up so it makes it on a consistent thing, like brick walling. We'll talk about brick walling at some point. Compression brings the volume down and then you can compensate by turning it up, but that is not what compression does. You turning it up is just a separate thing. It's not actually compression. Okay, I know this is massively complicated and everything about compression is rather complicated, especially for someone who's just learning to do it. That is why I'm stopping doing this series very, very soon, because there are much better people to teach it. So I'm going to teach you the basics, and then obviously you can go on and learn other stuff from professionals, because learning from people who've got a lot of experience is way more important than learning from me, who's only been doing it for like 3 years. So next video will be the last one. It's going to be a big roundup about bedroom recording, and I'll send you on your way to go and make some cool music, and then you can send it us at any point. That's always been the case. Send us your music. There's a video saying send us your music or show us your band. I'll link that up there. Yeah, go on your way and make some cool music, and check in for the reboot that's coming soon, totally.